morning to the listeners and viewers of the Real Stuff podcast. Today is Friday, and when it's Friday, it's Poetry Corner. And today we have a special poet. His name is Marlon Thompson. Good morning, Marlon.
Good morning, and I must say thank you guys for having me.
Yes, and with us also is co-host Flavius, and we're here to talk about poetry and to explore Marlon's journey. So the floor is yours, Marlon. But firstly, let us talk about your growing up in Trench Town, the Mecca, the epicenter of roots and culture.
That is correct. Yes, so growing up in Trench Town, I mean, as you know, it's one of those challenging community to live in. There's a lot of challenge, economic challenge and all of that. Growing up, I didn't really see a lot of inspirations around me because like in Trench Town, you have small pockets of community within a community. So my community was one of those small pockets within Trench Town. So you have like, within Trench Town, you have like Texas, Mexico, Brooklyn, Angola, Pegasus, and so on. I started out, well, I didn't go to preschool, so I started out at Trench Town Primary. So that's where my education started. And I believe like my poetic journey really started in the 6th grade. I started school late, so I had to skip like 5th grade. I went from 1 grade, 2 grade, 3 grade, 4th grade, and then 5th grade. But I think then at 12, because at 12 I was still in primary school, I realized that I have been developing poetic skills because like I would try to rhyme and so on and so forth. And then after Trench Town, I went to Marley All Age, and then from there to Kingston Technical. So growing up in the community, there was a lot of crime and violence, but at the same times, as kids, we sometimes become rebellious, give a little trouble here and there, but it was good and bad. But for me, I have used my poems and poetry as a means of escape. So like I will write in my head and I start, with writing books and so on. So that is part of my journey. Yes.
Well, as we talk about poetry, I know you have, as you say, you have an anthology. So just give us some lines, I mean, let us hear.
Okay, great. All right. So I must say, like, most of the pieces in my book, they are somewhat of a story and also liberating. I published my book in 2014. And so that is after compiling over the years, and the thought came to me to publish a book. And there are a lot of persons who would, whenever I go to like churches and so on, and I share pieces of my poem, persons are saying, Marlon, when are you doing the book? So I did this book in 2013, and one of the pieces there was I Refuse to Be Limited. So I'm going to talk about that piece, I Refuse to Be Limited. I was in a very dry season. It was a very dry season for me. I wasn't working, wasn't going to school, and I was going to church. And so that time I was like, no, I cannot accept where I am at. So I wrote, I Refuse to Be Limited. And this is also one, when I started to come out and share my poetry with persons, this was one of the first poems that I shared publicly, which is called I Refuse to Be Limited. So I'm going to share that one, and it's from the book, my book, which is Words. So Words from Mama's Son. So yeah, so I'm sharing that one from this book, the first piece of poem that I'm going to share. Should I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I refuse to be limited. I refuse to be limited by challenge, fear, and persecution. I refuse to be limited by labels, stigmas, barriers, and accusations. I refuse to be limited by circumstances, conditions, and situations. I refuse to be limited. May God extend my borders and my territory, even beyond this shore. I refuse to be limited. I refuse to be limited by generational limits, curses, and bonds. See, I'm breaking all traditions and all ungodly structure from my life. I refuse to be limited. I refuse to be limited. May these words not be like the shaft which the winds drive away. May these words not be like landslide on the hillside, like rust on a zinc fence or butter in the sun. But may these words take root and bear good fruits. May these words echo from the mountaintops. May these words resound in the atmosphere. May these words dance in the streets. May these words break, yes, break all spiritual chains that wants to keep me in bondage. May these words silence, yes, every no good word that was ever spoken over my life. I refuse to be limited. When I say I refuse to be limited, I'm not boasting. I'm not boasting about tomorrow, but I'm stating my claim today. When I say I refuse to be limited, I'm not just using intellectual rhymes to state a philosophy. See, I'm making a proclamation because I'm declaring a declaration because I'm standing on this affirmation because of my determination. I refuse to be limited. I refuse to be limited. May these words find place in time and space. May the universe favors me with God's good grace, because I refuse to be limited. Thank you.
Wow. Very inspirational, man. Very inspirational. And it really sort of explains your spirituality too, And I love that.
Right. Yes, yes, it does. And as I said, this piece of poem it was at a very dry season in my life, like nothing now go on. You see, so it was from that birth. I refused to be limited because in my mind, I was seeing myself not where I am now, but where I want to be. So I had to use those words. Those words were comfort to me. It was like it's as part of it would say, may these words break all spiritual chains that wants to keep me in bondage. So I was using those words to empower myself. And I mean, I've gone places where I performed these piece of poem and persons were very inspired and touched by it.
Yes, yes. Well, the words, says a whole lot, and the part I like when you use declaration because people don't know that when you speak things in the atmosphere, you can make things happen, and
That
yeah, and that also expresses it. So just go ahead, it's your day, it's your forum, so your platform.
that is true. I just want to add to what you're saying, and I think like as poets, for persons who are involved in poetry, we touch on social issues. So sometimes poets use their words for social protests or protests. Are they use their words, not just poets, but persons in performing arts tend to use their words as means of touching on topical issues affecting the society. I have poems that, touch on topical issue. I have a poem which is called Restoring the Love, which like when I see like children being, murdered or they're affected by crime and violence, I think that poem was birthed from that place of, saying how do we restore the love? So words are very powerful. They are empowering. It's able to build a nation, break a nation, can start a war. It can, cause persons to fall in love and out of love. So I understand very young, from a young age, that words are very, very powerful. And for me personally, I use words to encourage myself, and I also listen to other people's words to encourage myself. So yeah. So I have so I'm gonna share Restoring the Love, that piece. So Restoring the Love, as I said before, I think this piece was inspired while there might be issues in Jamaica. I think this piece was really birthed from the Sandy Hook where the children, I think this is in the States where some children
Yeah.
were killed at this elementary school. And it was really birthed from that place, like, because whilst we're living in a world where there are a lot of issues and killing, we cannot get immune to it. We have to really show that we are not accepting, all of this that is happening. If it's not good, then we should protest. We should, you know, use our words or use our voice. We don't know where it will reach, but it can make a difference. So restoring the love. How do we write a eulogy for a 5-year-old whose dreams have been shattered by bullets from a smoking gun? How could we? How can we dance in the streets when gunshots echo in the air? How will we? How do we falsify information about another man's character with malicious intent to destroy their hard work? How dare we? Can we really pass the blind just that need a helping hand for someone to take them to the other side of the street? Where are we? Will we fill our stomachs and sit comfortably knowing there are hungry children on our streets? Really? We are wonderful people. How did our hearts get so cold? Have we lost our souls? Let us restore the love that will warm our hearts, folding our arms around it like a mother's embrace. Let us stop the venomous attacks and create love, peace, and kindness. Let us restore compassion without fear of looking foolish. Let us restore kindness even if it's not trendy. Let us stop the social degradation and return to our moral obligation. Let us find the HEART of love that demonstrates the ART of love. Let us not allow fear and hate to spread like wildfires. If we restore the love, it can be our common denominator. This we could use as our currency for the future. Let us paint peace, love, and kindness on the canvas of our minds, that it will forever be etched in our hearts. Let us be united in our effort to love in this country. Let love be the pillow on which we lay our heads, and peace the place we spread our beds. Let us sow the seeds of kindness so we can reap a good harvest. Let us repair broken relationships so we can be made whole. Let us change the atmosphere of distorted morality into an atmosphere of love and unity. Let us forgive those who have made restitution for damage they have done to our fellow men. Let us repair harm and heal wounds so we may avoid the tears of war. Let us resolve conflict peacefully and right the wrongs. We all have made mistakes, and certainly we have wronged others. However, let us tear down the fences of hatred, the barbed wires of hurt, and the walls of resentment. Let violence be crushed to atoms and explode into a volcano of love and watered with a tsunami of joy. So yeah, that piece was called Restoring the Love.
Yes, I like the end. I like the imagery of, you know, a volcano exploding, and we know that, you know, when it does that, a tsunami really comes, you know, and water flows. Yeah, it's really, yeah, it's really a great poem. But just something that you have written in your bio, that you're an ambassador for youth empowerment. So tell me, what is your role?
So,
what you have been doing along that line?
So what happened is that, well, currently, I mean, a lot of people don't know, but I volunteer. Well, I sit on the board of a basic school, but it's more so on a volunteer work basis, because what happened is that this school is called Mount Faith Basic School in Trench Town. It was a struggling school, and I was approached by the chairman, Robert Dwyer, who asked me to come on board, and ever since then I've been volunteering with the school. So what we do as part of the board, we basically look for funding or to get persons to come on board to assist the school, and it was for the children. So to your question, like for me, so it even at that tender age, I want to see children grow, and our work was to ensure that the school is still afloat and didn't close down. And so far we have been doing a good job in terms of that. For youth empowerment, I use my poetry and my words. So oftentimes I'll be invited I've been at UTech, University of Technology. I went to a HRM seminar for some final, this was in 2015 or 2014, some final year students, they were doing the HRM seminar, and I did the I Refuse to Be Limited there. I have been to Excelsior Community College about 3 or 4 times to a couple of their youth seminars, and I also use some of my poems for empowerment. And I know that my style of poetry is very diverse, but also when I go to an event, especially it's for youths, I would tailor my performance for empowering and encouragement. So in the capacity of me being an ambassador for youth empowerment, or I basically would use my words on my platform. And in recent times, I've joined Malachi's team in terms of the school tour. I've been to 2 schools, Spanish Town High, and I think it was George's. But outside of Malachi's team, I was invited to Wilma's boys quite recently, about a few weeks ago or a month ago. I went there to talk about careers in IT, but I share one of my poems, and I also was telling the youths as it relates to how to self-publish. So for me, I like seeing youth grow. They should be protected. There are a lot of distractions out there. There's a lot of distractions. So we still need positive voices that will teach our youths to just stay on the right path, have integrity, wait your turn, wait your time. Sometimes success takes a little while. Don't follow the rush mentality in terms of how you have to make it quick and fast by whatever means. So for me, I've also was invited to a session. I think the Hope Botanical Gardens, they were hosting some students from Augustown Primary School, and it was over 150 kids. Now, that was interesting for me because what happened is that I would have to tailor my performance for the kids, because I can't be using my poems I have a big vocabulary, so my poems tend to I use the words that I know. So what happened is that I would also have to tailor my performance so they can understand, and I engage in them. They're not distracted and the words are not over their head. So before I start, I would be like, okay, I have a poem which I wrote from 12, which is called the polluted world. Yeah, it was about pollution. And I would ask them, what is pollution? Then they start to answer the question, and then I get into the poem. And because I wrote that poem when I was much younger, it used simpler words, so they're able to understand it. I did refuse to limited, and they also was able to grasp the concept because I was engaging and I would go at a slow pace. And when I'm speaking, I would project my voice, and in like a mediation in terms of the words, I would say, listen. So I would say, listen. So when I'm performing, so because I've done many performances, I somehow know how to adapt to my environment. So yes, I'm big on youth empowerment, love seeing youths grow, love seeing them prosper, love seeing them prevail, love seeing them overcome, because they are the future. And if we're on to shape our society with positive values, attitudes, morals, then we have to look to the youths, because it's hard to change adults, but it's easier to get to the youths, and we have to get to their mind. There's so much distraction. And I've been to an event, and that event at Hope Zoo, and I went with I have a 5-year-old son, Caleb. So we went to an event, and I was passing, and a little girl from Augustone Primary, I hear she said, sir. So I was passing, she was there with her mommy selling little stuff, but I was a good look at distance from her. So I turned around. I didn't recognize her, I didn't know her. But I kind of, in my mind, I was quick and fast to know that this is a little girl who probably saw me from somewhere. So her mother, while I was approaching her mother said, her mother was saying, why are you calling to the gentleman? You know him? So at the same time, I reached up and I said, you're from Augustone Primary? And she said, yes. So I knew that's where she remembers me from. So I think like with that, impact would have allowed her to remember me and so on. So yeah, so youth empowerment, big on it. love seeing youth grow and prosper.
Well, as we're talking about that, give us that poem that you had written at 12 years old.
Oh,
If you have it
all
right
right,
here.
I didn't plan on sharing that one, but it's okay. So so this poem is called all right, so it's a polluted world. So this was when I was 12. I wrote this one. So the earth is round and full of towns. Trees and plants, animals are found. The earth is polluted all around. Help clean it, and don't you frown. Factories and cars still abound. They polluted the water, air, and ground. If we don't stop, soon we'll find that there will be no life of any kind upon this earth which once was fine. Yes, so that was it.
Yes, just a quick thing, because you were talking about it also, that your poem is modern and diverse. Well, explain, because, many people wouldn't understand when you say that.
I, that is a very good question. All right. So what happened is that poetry has evolved over the years. All right. So in the past, you would have poems which each line rhyme time, mine, wine, sign, and it would be in four stanza, and it goes down. Persons would. So in the past, if you're not writing poems like that, it would be, but yeah, there are poems and poetry that tells story. So it's different. So the evolution, like in Jamaica, we had like back then there were more dub poets. Like for me, I haven't in these recent times I'm doing like some of my poems, some of my pieces. I have some dub poems. Beat Me a Drum one, and I'm working on a poem which is called Clap as a Clap, Man a Drop, Dear Lord, Watch My Head Back. Thugs in the streets, hiding like rats, venom on their tongue, waiting with their gun. So I have that. But what happened is that the reason I said modern and diverse is because I am able to pull from all these different styles of poetry, and I can do poems in one. So like which I just mentioned, clap as a clap, man a drop. So it's really like a dub poet, but it's also like a standard English poem because I fuse the two together. So it really, modern and diverse is really saying that when it comes on to poetry, I have the dexterity. I have different styles. I'm flexible, I'm verse. I can go in, I can do dub poems, I can do, modern poems. I can do poems that tells a story. I can, I have a poem which touched on, some of the challenge that we face in society, which is called The Truth Without Apology. So so that really speaks to what it is. It really shows my dexterity and different styles and flexibility and just merging everything in one.
Well, as you mentioned that poem, definitely would like to hear it.
So is it The Truth Without Apology?
Yes, yes.
All right, so The Truth Without Apology is like, all right, so what we live in a time where there's so much things happening, there's so much distraction, there is so much you know, so much different things. So this really brings into context what is happening and how as a poet I'm addressing it or looking at it, my perspective, being a conscientious observer. So The Truth Without Apology. So this one is, so I kind of paused there because then what happened is that The Truth Without Apology, I have tend to perform it with unapologetic. So I'm going to The Truth Without Apology. So I had to pause here to kind of get my thoughts
Yeah, man. So
together.
you can just do them one after the other. No problem.
All right, so I can do that. So The Truth Without Apology. Pseudo intellectuals with their weapons of mass persuasion influence the masses with their false perception, distorted reality, the illusion of celebrity, television shaping your reality, forge referendum, oppressive legislation, drama constitution, whispering lies on deceitful tongues. Ivy League graduates boast about their degrees, yet they stand before us with no integrity. Yes, it has been stated that the truth is overrated and outdated. So we have a nation of sheep mixed with wolves, ruled by government, owned by thieves, spin doctors, systematic bullies, leaders who are oblivious to our plights and immune to our struggles, hopeless victim patronized by the system because we have homeless people living in Injustice Square. Oh, they say it's homeless people living in Justice Square. Their monuments and murals is just for show because the deaths of our youth is like a game. It's a shame. The advent of technology is good, but evil has always devised a new strategy. Religious entrepreneurs enrich themselves in God's name, yet being biblically ignorant and morally corrupt. Historical inaccuracies being taught in our universities, nation with self-interest foreign policies. This is the truth without apology. And even though we live in the age of information, many bask in the glory of ignorance. Stupidity has become a viral trend, while wisdom and virtue is in isolation. The dumbing down of the youths, the imprisonment of the truth, the raping of the nation. Is this the vile generation? Where is the condemnation? This is the truth without apology. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So that one, the truth without apology, it's not in. So in my book, I Refuse to Be Limited is in my first publication because I'm currently working on another publication. And so the next one, which I'm doing, which is Unapologetic, it's a youth empowerment poem, basically. And, you know, I have an idea to really perform it for my son one day. When I can get his attention and he's listening, I really want to do this one for him, which is called Unapologetic. I've performed it at a few places, but not a lot. I did it at a graduation. I did it at Spanish Town High. That was the only poem I did at Spanish Town High with Malachi's team. And yeah, I think I've performed it at probably 3 places. So I've not really done this poem a lot. So it's called Unapologetic. It's basically empowerment. It's for anyone who wants to feel empowered. So don't frown. So it's unapologetic. Don't frown because people are offended by your smiles. And don't shrink because your confidence is misinterpreted as pride. When they speak to you, look them straight in the eye, well, respectfully if they deserve it. But if they throw a pity party for you, do not attend. You are not inadequate. You're not the tags in which they will tag you. You're not the label in which they will label you. And you're not the brand in how they will brand you. You are young with vision. I want you to aspire to be a visionary. Militant like troops crossing borders, like army crossing river, like Bustamante standing firm and strong, like Martin Luther. I want you to preserve your dreams. I want you to be the kings and queens of your time, holding your truth like Sojourner Truth. I want you to stand, yes, stand not to fall, rise not to fail, conquer all obstacles and win. Yes, I want you to write like a poet writing poetry, but more so be an intellectual like W.E. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey. And on the contrary, hear this, I know you're on a path of creating your own destiny, but trust me, do it to the best of your ability. Unapologetic.
Wow. Beautiful. Wonderful. Just want to ask you though, you know, I mean, you're a youth out of the inner city. Now we are pursuing a master's and all that degree. So really explain to, you know, expand on this topic about your journey, you know, of getting to where you're at right now and to where you're going.
All right. My journey, it's there, like, I think because of my challenge growing up, I think for some part of telling my story sometimes become a little bit painful, and I always tend to like shy away from. I'm going to speak though. I always tend to shy away from my struggles and my past, but it's part of my story. So it's good that you actually mentioned that because our struggles, what we go through in life, shape us, and it becomes part of our story. And I think because I grew up in such hard environment, so like based on perception and my features, a lot of person would not have known that I have had so much struggle. I've gone through so much struggle where I was even displaced, and displaced because of war in my community. I had to go to my aunt to live in Garden Town. My nephew was killed in front of my mother. and all that. I have witnessed things that most youths or child shouldn't witness. And even though I witnessed some of those things, I have never been immune to what is happening around me. I've never been like, have a cold heart. So even though I'm from a hard environment, and I mean hard environment, like really hard environment, because what happened is that Trench Town, you know, there's a side of Trench Town which is jungle. So I was from jungle side, and it was by far at the time one of Jamaica's toughest inner city community to live in, one of the toughest at the time I was living there. And at the time, a lot of things that would be exposed on social media now, we didn't have social media then. So even things happen in my community, whereas people could not view, people wouldn't see or people wouldn't know. I remember I had to beg for my life because the same day my nephew died, it was like a community. It was a community war fraction, and my door was kicked off. And the guy who come in, he knows me, and he's like, Marlon, are you here to live? Because I used to go to primary school with him. And then he's like, one of them said, oh, I'm in his house. That's my mother. Because a lot of the youths them from the other community, they would know my mother too. So they kind of respect her. But they were there for like blood. So a lot of persons, this thing, if I like, this story seems so surreal, whereas you would probably just hear about this in Africa and all that, but this happened right here in Jamaica. And this was 2004. And the only reason why we didn't have a massacre, because male Christian had to flee the community. They had to run out of the community. And that day, my nephew, he was 15, he was 15 at the time when he was killed. So he died 2 days, he was killed 2 days before his 16th birthday. And I feel like I was spared for two reasons. God spared my life. I don't think that they didn't kill me because they didn't want to. God spared my life, and the fact that one of the guy know me, said, yo, Marlon, I hear you, because it was just basically they came for a meal. Any man. I remember one time at the back of the door, I hear a girl, because one woman was there with them, and they're knocking down the door and saying, I want blood, I want blood, I want blood. So for me, that was one of the most painful experience I've gone through. And because the community was locked down for 4 hours, and I don't know what it was, if it was politically motivated or what, that they wanted to get rid of people within that community or what, but I can tell you 4 hours with no police came to the rescue, 4 hours. And imagine you being locked down for 4 hours and you're not sure if you're going to live or die. You are just there, just hoping, you're praying, you don't know. Service was done because it was right after Ivan, I think. So there was no phone service. Most communities was already affected. People was dealing with their own problems. But here you are, almost facing death, with people with machete and gun and rifles and 16, hundreds of men corralling your community like a curfew. So like for me, that was the last part of my major bad experience there, that lockdown, because I've experienced other incident, whereas we would have to not sleep at our house because of war in the community. Because at the time, jungle was one of the toughest place to live. Like surviving it's very, I give God thanks that I survive and pass the worst. So for me, I worked very hard because I realized that. So even when I left Trench Town Primary and went to Marley, I was self-aware. I was very conscious that I had to work very hard. I always wanted more because, like for me, my older siblings, I would have achieved more than they did. So like for me, I was like, they look out for me, but they still didn't have it either. So, but at the end of the day, they were very encouraging to see that their little brother and my mother would also see her son striving. So they saw the growth from them. So they were always protective of me. But that time, nobody could protect anyone when that incident happened. The painful part about it was when my nephew was killed in front of my mother, and it was a very painful time for the family. I left the community then my journey, like I spent 5 years out of the community, and because I got a job at Air Jamaica, and then Air Jamaica was downsizing, I was made redundant, so I had to go back to the community. And then when I went back, I basically began to work and study. I decided to push forward. doing my degree. I have a bachelor's in information technology. I'm now doing a master's in management information system. I have grown in my organization and respected. I work with a government organization. So most of their major functions, I would be the entertainment package. So for me, growing up, as I said, that was just one portion of the story, because when I'm asked, like, tell me about your story, I don't know where to start, because there is so much challenge that I've navigated and so much real issue that I've faced, but I've survived, I've passed the worst. And that was one of the reasons why I give back to my community by, as I said, that basic school that I do volunteer work with. So that is one of the ways that I've just really tried to give back from my own resources.
Oh, what a journey.
Wow. And the problem
Yeah,
with that, the problem with that journey is that you are not alone. Many people
yeah,
that story.
Yeah, a lot of persons have their story. But what is interesting to, like when I did my book, at the time when I did my book, I was still living in Trench Town. When I published my book, I was still living in the community. I was compiling it while living there. That book was actually published. So Words from Mama's Son, and then when I did the book, it has so much. I have a piece in it which is called Mama Up a Cool Shade. So it tells my mother's journey in that one, and Morning in Trench Town. I have a poem which I call. So it really, even though I've been through painful experience, I tend to always look on the lighter and brighter side of things. So I didn't use my story for pity and whatever. It's just like in a situation like this, if I'm asked, I will say, but I do not necessarily go about and share my story, because I've always, not that I'm ashamed, I've never been ashamed of where I've come from, and I've always mentioned it. But sometimes from my story and my struggle, sometimes it's something where I've kind of, in the past, I've kind of like, not really, I've blotted it out of my mind, but I realize, as I said before, I've embraced it too, because it's also part of my story and part of my journey.
Yes. So you mentioned some poems, and before we go, we'd just like you to, just recite those poems for us.
All right, no problem. So I'm doing this one which is called Mama Upper Cool Shade. Now this one really is, yeah, 29. So this poem is, it shows my mother and her struggle, and also it shows, as I said, my diversity in terms of how I write poems and the style of poem that I write. So Mama Upper Cool Shade. My granny Dutch pot. I was so much picnic at the mama doorway. Like a fish head dead. A fish head dead. But uno a gamble. Remember where Uncle Butch say at church last week. Uno tande. Come quick for the bag them. Cause mama stopped up at the cool shade under the big plum tree up a tank. She said she tired. Cause they wash people dirty clothes from morning. She said the breeder dirty clothes them give her. She never know she would ain't finish. A member say from 5 this morning she leave out. She say, me can manage the bag them, and worse, the sun got hot. She tell me to tell you to stop the chatting and come. That's all you're good for. Mind you lick me, cause me would reach up at the cool shade tree so fast and tell mama. And you would see if you get dinner in here today. Mama say, you see how hard she have to work? She tell me to tell you, no fan fool of yourself. Cause fear work not easy. Not even tea or lunch she get. She just a walk so from morning, and she a wait for you up at the cool shade tree. She said the sun hot, you see? And from town she a come from with the load. Well, me make sure me tell you and put you there as my witness. Me gone, cause mama say she a go spit. And if it dry before me get back, we are gonna get some licks. That's it. Mama over cool shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so that one to show a little lighter, the story and thing, because my mother was one of those persons who have always been working hard and struggling and so on. So it really tells her story, a little part of her story. So, and I have morning in Trench Town.
Go ahead, man.
Okay, so morning in Trench Town. And as I said before, even though the community that I grew up in, it was a challenge living there. As with all places, there is good and there is bad. Because out of it, I was able to, out of my story and out of my journey, I was able to write a book. I was able to publish. And when I published my book, it's not that there were people around me that was doing it. I wasn't inspired by it. It's just it's something that seems that I wanted to do. And then persons approached me and said, Marlon, you should. So it was like a confirmation. So for me, the morning in Trench Town really shows the brighter side in terms of kids, because in those communities, people still laugh, they still play, they still, life is as normal as it can be anywhere else, but sometimes there were disruption. And no, I must say the community is not as bad as it used to be or when I was growing up. I think it has evolved. There's still challenges as with a lot of the communities that troubled community over Jamaica. But I think we're still, not just in Trench Town, but the other community, we have a far way to go, and really hope we get somewhere in terms of, stamping out crime and violence. And, so morning in Trench Town. It was the breaking of dawn. The morning was quaintly quiet, but suddenly I heard sweet melody coming from afar. Hummingbirds were singing, and I always say these things happen in Trench Town too. I could see them gathering on coral bells nearby. Their iridescent beauty was fascinating. You could see droplets of dew gently dancing on leaves. The pungent smell of mangoes perfumed the air. Two barefoot boys ran hysterically from one of the houses on the street, one in twice torn and patched shorts and the other in cut-off khaki pants, laughing unapologetically as they raced towards a nearby ackee tree. I could hear a barking mongrel dog and a crowing rooster heralding the new day. Sounds of nature muted the silence. The brilliant summer sun gracefully emerged from the east as if it were peeking at the events of the morning. Life began to awaken from every nook and cranny. Sounds of a crying baby. A lady pushing her handcart shouted out, $50 fab soap and bleach. She picked up a stone, for she was being attacked by the mischievous mongrel dog. She threw the stone at him and said, every man in me and you. He dashed so fast she laughed as he skittered away. A pot cover falls with a loud clatter. The deafening sounds played havoc on my eardrums. Pigeons from the outskirts of the morning flutter out in ranks over the concrete houses as if putting on a hair show. My neighbor's radio comes on, loud and clear. She didn't adjust the volume. Bob Marley's voice from the radio now floats in the crisp morning breeze. Morning has broken in Trench Town. I must say something as I conclude on that poem. I think when I was first reading this poem to someone, they said, I'm not Trench Town that. So that's why I had to explain to them, like, these things happen in Trench Town because there's a perception to say, okay, probably they were looking forward to me writing a poem about shots being fired and man dead and all of that. But as I said before, there's also the lighter and brighter side of Trench Town, and that's what I gave them, that side that maybe they've heard the other stories. So that this poem really shows there's also life happening there.
I think the problem is that because the imagery, makes it look like it's a rural area you're talking about. So, people don't know that things like this happen in a inner city. So
that is correct. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying people don't understand that those things happen in the concrete jungle.
That is correct. That is correct. Because here's what happened.
In the plains, yeah.
Right. Because at the time where I was living in the community there, there was not a lot of people there too. There were a lot of the houses were empty, sometimes because of war and all that. Now, all the places, there's no empty houses now. But there was a lot of bush also. There was like the houses had so much. There was like we could just walk at the back of the yard and there was like bush all over. So there was also nature happening around us. It was, yeah, as I said, concrete jungle, but there was so much bush and so much you know, we could hunt birds not too far from our houses. So those things happen.
Trees and all that.
Right.
But I find your writing is very, very descriptive, you know.
Right.
You can really capture somebody easily.
Yes.
Have them immersed into the location easily.
Right.
And that's
there's another piece which I have, which is called Zinc Fence Prejudice.
Okay, that I would love to hear that.
So yeah, this one is. So I'm gonna have to tell a story if time permits me as it relates to zinc fence prejudice. You know that even though a person living in an inner city community, there are still people within those inner city community who prejudice them because they feel like they're better than them.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's just like a road separate them a street, and then like you have inner city community, and then you have another inner city community. But those over this side feel like they're better than the other people over the other side.
Yep.
So in Jamaica, they talk about classism and so on, but a lot of prejudice happens in every sector of our society, even within, you know, those communities. So this really speaks to, this really gives, and I guess probably you could basically tell me what you get from it, but this really speaks to what I'm just saying. So zinc fence prejudice. What separated them was a rusty old zinc fence. However, she convinced herself that she was on the better side. It was her wall, a line of demarcation, the line that separates her from them. She couldn't help being delusional. In fact, she was comfortable in that state. She told her children not to talk to them because their pot is black and hers is shine. She told her children not to play with them because their floor isn't carpeted. She also told her kids not to converse with them because they have no velvet drapes nor crystal chandeliers. They don't have a refrigerator, and she doesn't want them to ask her for ice. She created an iron curtain and severed the lines of communication, chopping off the lines of communication dead. She fed her delusional state because she convinced herself she was better than them. But what she failed to realize, despite her pot being shiny and theirs being black, all that separated her from them was a rusty old zinc fence.
Yeah.
That is an everyday thing, I can tell you that.
Yeah,
Oh,
people
yeah.
still do it. Yeah, people still do it. Yeah, man. So yeah, I like that piece because it really, when I wrote this piece, when I was leaving, I left the community for a little bit and I was visiting my mother. So I took a cab and one of the lady from the other community, the man was going to turn off, but he would have to turn off in my community first. She said, she don't want to go there, driver, what you doing? And she's creating excitement. And I was like, why are you acting that way? Like your community is better than where I live because I know where she was going. So I'm saying it's very safe. There's no war. There's nothing that was going on at the end of the day. But she didn't feel the need. She need to vent. But she would want, because other people, they're feeling like their community is much safer. But at the time it wasn't, we're in the community there. The driver is driving within the community. It's not even like on a main road where the driver is turning off. This is in the community, and he's just making a small turn because I have a bag. And she was creating the most excitement because she was living on the better side of the community. She did she didn't want to mix up it. She didn't want to go there. So yeah. So I think that incident happened before I write this book. So those thoughts were drawn from experiences. As I said, most of the pieces that I wrote, the thoughts are drawn from some of the experiences. Mm.
So all right, so Marlon, just hold up your book again, and let our listeners and viewers see it. Okay.
So it's called Words from Mama Son. It's not yet on Amazon. So what happened is that I only have physical copies of the book, but the reason why I did not try to get it on Amazon as yet, because I'm currently working on a publication. And I'll be basically just waiting so I could just put both books on it. This publication, I think it will become part of my legacy because I'm leaving it as a gift. I'm not, I hope, like to my family and friends and people who, probably want to be, because it has so much different pieces. Some of the pieces was written during COVID. Some of the pieces was written when I'm going through my experiences, challenge also. And it's basically really shows those different pieces where persons can relate to, whether it's love, loss, victory, defeat. They can read it and say, here's somebody that has been at these places and have overcome, and so on. It will be a book that anyone can read it, all age, but yeah. So that's why I didn't push to have this online. I'm just waiting until I finish my other book, which probably I'm hoping to. Because of my studies, I've actually delayed not so much focusing on it, but I have enough content to basically do the publication. It's just that I haven't, because of my studies, as I said, I needed time to really, because the hardest part of writing is probably organizing. I think Maya Angelou said that. I think Maya Angelou said the hardest part of writing is organizing, because you would write things somewhere, and then when you're going to, you have that line that you're written somewhere, you're trying to find it because that line would go perfect within what you wrote. So yeah, so I think I'm probably close to the organizing stage of the writing.
Okay, wonderful.
So okay. So are you on Facebook or Instagram or?
All right, so I am on. All right, so I had a book when I did this book, Words from Mama Son. I set up a Facebook page which is called Words from Mama Son. So there was a Facebook for this book. So what happened is that when I am going to publish the other book, I won't be creating another page. I will just basically rename the page.
Mm-hmm.
So currently I have a Facebook page. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Twitter. I work with technology, but I'm not so much out in the social media world. But I realize, like, if I have a story to tell or poems to share, I will have to basically, these are the platform that I'm going to have to engage with and things. So I looking forward to create some of those accounts for that reason. But I'm on Facebook.
Well, you're on the right place now, the Real Stuff podcast.
Right. And I must say thank you guys for having me. I think poetry is one of those areas that don't really get a lot of attention, but they have the voice. Poets are just as powerful as musicians with words. There are some creative writers out there. There are writers who, with their words, because some of these lyrics and songs, they are poetry, but there is just a rhythm to it.
Yeah.
So it's good. I must commend you guys for this platform, and thank you guys so much for having me. I'm humbled to be on it. And yeah, so the poets, thank you guys for hearing the poet's voice, because the poet's voice should be heard. We have stories, we have things to say. We want to address the political issues as was done in the past with our words. Yes.
So you're welcome. So Flavius,
Yeah.
up to you.
No. So we are very serious about poetry, as you can see, and we do a lot on the poetry corner, and we're trying to grow it as much as we can.
Very good.
Because yeah, we understand that poetry is essential to living, basically. And people love poetry, although some of them don't even, say that or articulate that or, some of them don't even know. But when they hear poetry, they feel good and all that.
Yeah, that is true. I performed once at Excelsior, and I saw a young lady cried in the audience because I think what I was saying, I can understand, and because the words was she probably was at a place in her life where she feel like she needed to hear those words.
Yeah.
I was sitting beside her, and then I went up to perform, and then I reached down. I saw her friend was saying to me, you just made her cry because she was still crying. She was just there.
Yeah.
It touched her so much that she ended up in tears. Yeah, like she just needed to hear those words. It was I Refuse to Be Limited that I did. And the young lady was crying there, was just crying.
Yeah.
So I've seen that.
And you see, and poetry is universal. Everybody, I mean, all over the world, yeah, poetry, people, I have read poetry from people from, Africa, Europe, America, Caribbean. Poetry is just universal and powerful.
Right, indeed.
Yes. So we thank you very much for coming on and joining us.
Yeah, man.
And
thank you guys for having me.
Your poems with us. We thank you very much. And Courtney, we'll get back to you because we definitely want for you to come back. And we have a lot of different, what we'll call it now, different things that we do on Poetry Corner.
Okay.
No problem. The newest one coming up is the celebration, celebrating your poems, your peers' poems.
Right.
And celebrating.
Very good.
We listen to a poem and then we talk about it. And I think that is also very important. See what everybody gets, different people getting different things from the same words, the same lines, So that's very, very, very important. So back to you, Courtney.
Okay, well, thanks again, Marlon, for being with us on Poetry Corner.
Welcome.
And, we're expecting to see you, in the future again. So, it's just, that's for now from the Real Stuff podcast. And we'll, continue to keep this Poetry Corner going.
Okay, thank you guys. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
You lead us so full. You belong far away away. Ajugwala lebobu seru. Leader mua, leader sungfula. Leader mua, leader sungfula.
Well, unfortunately, this is it. Till next time. Bless.
All you gotta do is just speak. One word is enough, and I'm no longer so rough. I forget what I was trying to say. I no longer do what I was gonna do, but you're no good for me. That's why me know what set me if it could flee. Me have to take away me say.